Good evening, everyone. Today is Thursday, February 11th. This is the Goffstown Planning Board. We will be meeting tonight to address new business and some correspondence and action items. Before we do that, I will advise the members here and members of the public that as chair of the Goffstown Planning Board, due to the COVID-19 outbreak and in accordance with Governor Sununu's Emergency Order Number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, this board is authorized to meet electronically. There is no physical location to observe other than here at Town Hall. You are able to contemporaneously listen to this meeting, and all of this is pursuant to the Governor's Emergency Order. Public access is provided to this meeting by telephone, with additional access possible by video or other electronic means. The Planning Board is using a telephone conference line for this electronic meeting. The public has access to contemporaneously listen, and if necessary, participate in this meeting through dialing 603-766-5646 and using the participant code 785-645, followed by the pound sign. A public notice of the necessary information for accessing this meeting has been given using in regards to the telephone number with the posted agenda. We have a mechanism for the public to alert us during the meeting if there are problems with access. If at any point during the meeting you have problems with access on the telephone, please call 660-5000. We will adjourn the meeting if you are unable to access the meeting, and we will have it rescheduled at another time. All votes taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote, and we're going to start the vote by taking a roll call attendance and finding out who is with us here tonight. When each member states their presence, we ask also whether there is anybody else in the room with you. Just if there is anybody online who is going to speak from the public, when we have a public hearing, we will be asking you to hit *9, and the operator will recognize you to speak. So,
You now have Jim, Karen, and Phil also, so they're all online.
We have a full board.
You have
right
a
now.
full board.
okay. All right. So, we're going to begin by doing a roll call, and I'm going to ask people who are here in attendance with the room to identify themselves. Patty, why don't we start with you?
Patty Gale, staff.
Gayla Breck, alternate and recording secretary.
My name is Barbara Griffin.
Tim Redmond.
David Pierce, I'm an alternate member.
All right, and members online, I'm going to call your name and ask for you to please state your name, and if anybody's with you. Kimberly.
Kimberly Peace, I'm alone.
Peter.
Peter Georgiantis, Selectman's Rep, and I'm so by myself.
Jim.
This is Jim Raymond. My wife Jane insists on walking through the kitchen occasionally, and I can't stop her.
All right. That's
Wherever
that.
I want to.
All right. Karen.
Karen Hughes, and it's just me and the dog.
Chewy.
Chewy. Yeah, Chewy's in the room.
All right, and Phil.
Bill Devanza here, and I'm alone.
All right, staff that we have online, Joanne.
Joanne Duffy, Planning and Economic Development Director, and I have my two dogs with me.
Sarah.
Sarah Whitey, Town Engineer. I have Sweet Caroline, and Duke promises to be a good boy.
All right, thank you, everybody. The first item on the agenda is we have 2 sets of minutes. I'm going to ask for motions on those separately, please. We have the minutes of November 12th. Those were mailed to you with the packet for this week's meeting. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
I'll give a second.
Is there any further discussion? That was a short meeting that we had to reassemble for. So if everybody's all set, I'm going to call for the vote. Tim?
Yes.
The chair votes yes. Kimberly?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Karen,
Abstain.
and Phil.
Yes. Karen was in attendance.
Karen, you were there, just so you know.
Oh, is this the November 14th one?
No, this is the November 12th one that we had all the problems with.
Oh, okay. Then, yes.
All right,
I thought it was a meeting I missed. Sorry about that.
okay, thank you. All right, I believe we already actually took care of those minutes. That one had just been missed, I think, is that right?
No, that
We
one,
still have another one coming?
We have the minute, 14th of January.
No, I know, but
the one we did the 12th, yeah, you missed it when you guys did a whole bunch
did
of
a
them.
whole bunch of them, that, we just missed that short one, okay. So moving on to our next set of minutes, which we received in our packet and electronically. We have the minutes of January 14th. Do I have a motion?
Motion to accept with corrections?
Tim has moved with corrections. Is there a second? That was Phil, it sounds like. Tim?
Just on the title page, it's January 14th, 2021, not 2020.
Whoops. Welcome to 2021. Anybody else?
I do have a little bit of a question on it. I mean, at the end of the meeting, I was kind of sequestered on what I could speak, and it doesn't reflect that in the minutes. I think it's important that something like that gets put in the minutes. Even though I see that it did get added that my comment was done, but there's no comment in there about being denied to speak. And I'm kind of concerned about that.
Do you have a specific change you want made to the minutes?
Well, I think maybe if the secretary would go back and just look at those at that meeting and make sure that she's confident that these minutes are correct, I'd be okay with that. So I would say I would ask that we do not approve these minutes until that's done.
Well, Peter, I'm not trying to give you a hard time, and I guess you're discussing,
There you are.
excuse me?
I'm not trying to give you a hard time. I just want the minutes to be accurate.
Well, then I need to know exactly what you're expecting Gail to do. And I'm not
I'm
giving you a
expecting-
hard time, and
I'm
if
expecting
part of the problem,
I'm expect-
Peter, is that when we're doing this by Zoom or telephonically, it is the habit of the chair to recognize people to speak so that we don't end up having the public not being able to understand what's being said. So if you could direct this, Gail, to what page you're talking about and exactly what you want in it, because the alternative is to have a complete transcription of what went on. And so I want to make sure that Gail knows what's expected. That's my question.
The answer to that question is that I would like Gail to review the section of the minutes where you said to me, where you cut me off and made the statement that we weren't going to discuss this now, where you had allowed Tim to speak, David to speak, and yourself to speak, but Peter Georgantis, a selectman's rep, was not allowed to speak. I want that to be reflected in the minutes.
Can I also have reflected that you asked to arm wrestle in the parking lot?
I did not. That was a joke from Jim Raymond. So if you think you need to have that in the minutes, Barbara, I'm more than happy to allow you to do that. I want it in the minutes. I mean, I'm sorry if you don't agree, but I think it's important that when somebody is sequestered to speak, that or is not allowed to speak, that it would be reflected in the minutes.
This is Jim. The motion made and seconded. I did not make that comment. I'm not that creative. I think the proper way is we can approve the minutes, but have the current minutes of this meeting reflect that Peter wanted some other matters added. But as to what's in the minutes, they're really a record of our action and our discussion on what's before us for applications and not necessarily on procedural matters that are within the board itself. So I suggest that the minutes for this meeting can reflect that Peter had concerns that discussions weren't included, but where there's no specific amendment being made, I don't know what more we can do.
was
I
another,
would move the question and then suggest that the minutes of this meeting show that Peter had concerns about the conduct of that meeting.
I'll take that motion. I had another hand in front of me. Tim?
Peter, in the paragraph that says, you said a long time ago that it used to be 2 units, and then it says the topography of the unit doesn't allow the sidewalk on the side of Cumberland Farms. After that statement, if you had something you'd like to state at this time, I will write it down, and it would be written down so that you'll have what you want on the record. Is that possible?
Well, I think it's important, and I think everybody realizes that I was cut off in the middle of, because Barbara thought I was going in a different direction instead of trying to put some accurate information into the discussion.
So, do you
That's
have,
my concern. Tim, if you just want to, if Jim just wants to put that in this meeting's minutes, that's fine.
okay,
But it needs to be reported somewhere that I tried to interject and was shut down.
well, we can put it add it to the minutes that we're gonna vote on right now if you'd like, or we can do it for this meeting, which you prefer.
Well, let's do it for this meeting.
All right, the motion on the floor is to approve the minutes of January 14th. If there's no further discussion, I'll call for the vote. Any further discussion?
Well, are we adding something to the minutes, or is this a comment that's being registered on the minutes discussion?
No, we're not adding anything to the minutes of
Other than
January
the 220,
Yeah, other than the-
2021. And in these minutes tonight, when you approve them the next meeting, she's gonna have that in there.
Is that acceptable, Peter?
Yep, that's fine.
Okay, thank you. So Jim moved the question. Do we have to have a second on that, or that's not a motion?
There
No,
was a
the
second.
question has been moved and seconded. Jim has moved the question. I'm ready to call the vote.
Okay.
Unless somebody wants to speak, Tim, on the motion. To approve the minutes as amended, Tim.
Yes, I'm sorry.
The chair votes yes. Kimberly?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Phil?
Yes.
Thank you. Gail, if you can also have the minutes reflect, and I think I did say it at the meeting, that as chair, any member is free to make a motion to overrule the chair, and I invite anybody to do that. I invited it at the last meeting, and of course, tonight, anybody can do it. Thank you. The next item that we had on our agenda was an item related to Incline Ave, but we have been informed that that's going to the ZBA, so that will not be discussed tonight.
It was on our agenda Tuesday night, and she didn't show, so we rescheduled it.
So we won't see that, if at all, until after the ZBA addresses it, correct? All right.
So before we move on, are you gonna request that everybody bring their material for the next meeting and pull it out of the packet, Patty, so you don't have to reproduce it again for the next meeting?
Well, they're gonna be going to the March 2nd ZBA meeting, and your next meeting is the end of February, so
It'd
on the
be
25th. So it'll
multiple
be
meetings?
whatever the meeting, March.
March 11th, right
I
there.
just know I'm looking at it, it's a pretty thick packet.
Just
So-
to bring it, and you'll act on it then. The process is they go to ZBA first before you make a recommendation to the
So my
select.
question is, are you gonna produce this in that meeting night, or should we be required to bring it for the meeting ourselves?
Bring it.
Okay, thank you.
Save it.
So
I have
say,
a question. Are we talking about the new business, lot 11,
No.
map 11, lot 17?
no. In your packet tonight, that you received for tonight's business, you have a stapled, multi-page packet of information that starts on the front page, Town of Goffstown, application for building permit. So that is for 16 Incline Drive. The request
Right.
is for you to please hold that. That matter
Okay.
is not coming before us, and when it does, which we would expect to be on March 11th, Patty would like to not have to recopy and send it out.
Right. Just a comment on that. There's a whole history on this particular lot. Goes back quite a long time.
Well, the ZBA's getting it first, Phil, so we'll consider it after we get the ZBA's decision.
Okay, I understand that, but I just wanted to bring it to the planning director's attention that there is a lot of history to this, so just that they're aware.
I presume the ZBA will ask for whatever historical information they need, and maybe when you see it on the agenda today, if you want something specific, you can talk to planning and ask them to bring it forward to the meeting, because it's not in the packet that we have.
Okay.
Okay. We do have somebody here, so I'm going to move on from the reappointment to the item of new business, as Phil just mentioned. Map 11, lot 17-7 is a completeness review, conditional use permit hearing for a proposal to add a second driveway in a lot that does not meet the frontage requirements that allows for the construction of a second driveway. The property has 219 feet of frontage and 250 feet is required for a second driveway per section 7.4.2 of the Goffstown zoning ordinance. The property is located at 537 Blackbrook Road and the owners are Joseph and Kelly Femino. The property is zoned agricultural. There is conditional use permit criteria that would need to be addressed in this. But the first thing we need to do is to determine whether there are any regional impacts and determine whether the application is complete. Joanne?
Hi, yes. So, excuse me, the application for this conditional use permit is complete,
And is there any regional impact?
and there is no regional impact, and there are no waivers requested.
All right, thank you. Is there a motion in regards to this application for map 11, lot 17-7?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved that map 11, lot 17-7 application is complete with no regional impact. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I'm going to call for the vote. Tim?
Yes.
The chair votes yes. Kimberly?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Phil?
Yes.
Okay. Joanne, why don't you give us a little background on this, and then the applicant, I'm presuming, is the individual here, and we'll hear from the applicant. Thank you. Joanne?
Okay. So the property is located on Blackbrook Road and has, excuse me, my voice is all tight. The property has 219 feet of frontage. In order to install a second driveway, 250 feet is required, and that's why he is requesting the conditional use permit. He's been working with Eric from DPW Eric had put together, and there's a memo in your packet regarding the types of things that Eric would be looking for if this driveway were approved. The driveway would be unpaved, and it would be parallel along Blackbrook Road. And the reason for that is the owner has a 38-foot camper trailer that he would pull in, face in, and park along that new driveway, and then he would be able to pull back out from the existing driveway. This way he would not need to back in to the driveway on Blackbrook Road. I think everyone knows Blackbrook Road can be, fast traffic, and not a lot of traffic, but fast traffic, and it would maybe be difficult to back in a trailer that size. The only concerns that I can see is whether or not the sight distance would be met as he's pulling out. He does have the sight distance currently from his current driveway, which is 200 feet in each direction, so he's fine with that. It's just whether or not that would also be met with the new driveway with a large vehicle in its place. DPW supports the CUP and is willing to work with the applicant to have his driveway permit approved. And the fire department had some comments, which you can see is included in the staff report.
Okay. Any questions from board members before we hear from the applicant? Anybody? David?
This is Jim. I have a question. Is there going to be any screening of this? It's going to be right on.
There is no screening proposed at this time.
All right, well, I'll be interested to hear from the applicant whether greenage has to come down in order to put this driveway in. David?
Joanne, this is David. I seem to recall there's a zoning regulation that says that vehicles cannot be parked forward of a front line of a house unless it's in a driveway. So if this driveway is approved, then there would be a correct location for parking a vehicle.
Correct.
Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, I'm not hearing anybody online, I'm not seeing any hands. So at this point, I invite the applicant. Come on up. Thanks, welcome.
Thank you. So I was prepared to read through the thing, but Joanne did a great job.
Hi, why don't you have a seat and tell us your name, just
sure.
for the record, it's a formality we need
Sure,
to go
Joe
through.
Femino. I live at 537 Blackbrook Road.
Excellent, thank you.
What I thought was necessary, I took one picture, and I have 2 copies of it to show the lot from the existing driveway, and I can hand these around.
Yeah, sure.
So what I did, I drew 2 things on here. First, the squares mark where the drains are, so it kind of illustrates what I have to navigate around if I'm going to back the trailer in. And then the dashed lines are where the new, well, that's the thing. There's already a spot there where I have parked the trailer before. So where those dashed lines are where I could park it right now. And the new driveway would just extend through that lot and just punch out the other side of the driveway, or the other side of the lot. And I do have, I don't know if you have the doodle that I made? Yeah, there you go.
Which one is the doodle?
Well, you have a better version, I think it's from Eric.
These 2.
Oh, it's the color, yeah,
Yeah.
okay, they're the same.
So that illustrates what would happen. So right now, again, we can park the camper there the way it is, but this
It's
is
the
just
same photo,
enabling
you
us to
can just
pull
pass it
through.
back down.
You want to leave it in for the record?
Are those ours to keep?
You can keep them, yeah.
Okay.
I don't need them.
I think they're the same, so if you want to.
Yeah, they are, you can give one back to him and put
Yep.
one.
But that's just to show, right now, the space is there for this pull-through. As to your question about trees, there's a couple trees that would have to come down where we would enter from the road. But the side closest to the finished driveway is wide open, because we use that for overflow parking if we have family over or something.
Right, because if I looked at your dotted blue lines on those photos, it looked like it was sort of actually between a small bank of greenage by the road and the house, right?
That's right.
So your intent is not to cut down all that greenage and have it closer to the road than it
Oh,
can be?
no. No, we'd like it to be as far away from the road as possible. And the lot is, we're actually fortunate to have this flat spot where it is, because it shoots right up into my leach field and front yard, and then my front yard house and so on. So, like, it's actually kind of perfect to have this option to put in an extra spot. So like I said, the thing's gonna go here, regardless of if we can pull in or not. But just being able to drive it straight in is just we feel it's gonna be a lot safer for traffic and for us to get into the spot faster as opposed to backing into it.
Sure. Questions from board members for the applicant present in the room? Questions from board members attending telephonically?
This is Jim. I couldn't either follow or understand the description of where the unit is presently parked and how this is going to change its location on the lot. Somebody could clarify that.
If you don't mind, sir, can I try and paraphrase it? Because I think Mr. Jim Raymond has something in front of him. Jim, if you look at the packet that has the yellow shaded proposed driveway on it, what the applicant just showed us was a picture from the, I'm gonna say, left side of the existing driveway, looking towards where the new driveway would be. So that the picture showed the paving at the end of the current driveway, and then the blue line's a spot where this yellow driveway would actually go, and I have to say, I think, there was trees, not full-grown trees, more shrubbish trees. Tim, what would you say the age of the pictures, the trees in the picture were? They're
It looks-
fairly young.
It's just more brush than anything. There's a few large trees, but for the
Right.
most part, it's
The,
brush.
So
the stupid
the-
birches that fall down anyway. You can actually see some fell down this year.
So his intent is not to cut those trees at the end of the current paved driveway, but to have the pull out, actually, it would be on the other side of what's currently existing for shrubs. So I think for visually, I would like cut the width of this driveway in half and leave a space between the edge of the driveway and the road. And he indicated that he is gonna cut down trees, brush where the proposed driveway entrance would be, because I'm assuming the shrub line basically goes all the way along the road there.
That's right. Where you see and I feel bad, is there a way to show the picture on the broadcast? No. So at the corner where the existing driveway
Yeah.
is and where the yellow portion enters, that tree there will stay and sort of create a nice barrier to the road. And right, the further you go into the new driveway, there's some trees in the back that just haven't been taken down. And actually, it's gonna do us a favor because some of them are starting to lean over the power lines going to my house. So those should come down anyway. But yeah, there's minimal trees to come down. I'm just in the back to open it up.
Jim, did that help? I'm not sure.
Not entirely, but I guess I have to
Give a
I
shot.
have to trust to some extent your interpretation of what he's said because it's a little hard to follow. Yeah, the issue is, I'll get right to it and maybe we can address it, but if you look at the conditional use permit criteria, it's paragraph 5, the use will not have a substantial adverse impact on the appearance and visual quality of the surrounding neighborhood, and if there's an SUV parked right in front that we're now allowing, that will. So I'm wondering how that's going to be addressed, because that is a required finding that we make.
Will the area that the trailer be parked have brush between it and the road?
Yes.
Will you be able to see the trailer? This is a pretty big trailer from the road.
Sure you
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
But the reality is the trailer's gonna be there, whether or not we can drive it in safely and drive it out safely, because we have no other place to put it. That's
The reality is you have a trailer and it's going to be parked.
that's right. So, we'll do our best, definitely, to make sure it's not ugly and an eyesore. But you drive around town, you can see campers in, every other driveway. I'm not sure why being able to see a camper would be a problem.
Okay, thank you. Tim?
So, Jim, can you hear me, Jim Raymond?
Yes?
If you look at the page that's in our packet that has the yellow shaded driveway, you got that one?
I do.
Okay. It shows the property line where the town right-of-way ends and the applicant's property line begins. Would it be acceptable to make it a condition that the applicant not cut any trees that is off of his own property and to try to keep it as close to the house as possible to maintain the screening that's on the edge of the road?
Well, there should be something. I respond to the applicant's comment about, these SUVs are in driveways, that the usual driveway is perpendicular to the road. This is running parallel to the road right across the front of the lot. And that is a greater visual impact. So I think to an extent it can be screened would be, in order to find and grant a conditional use permit, we have to make that finding. And I'm struggling with it.
Thank you. I'm going to, with the board's permission, Sarah, you're on the line. Are you familiar with the layout of this proposed driveway? I know the applicant
have not-
was working with Eric.
I have not seen it. They were working with Eric.
Okay.
To give you an idea, when when I initially put in the request through Eric, he did pull up Google Maps, and the road view that was taken in there, he actually couldn't even see the location of this spot, because when in the summer when there's overgrowth, there's enough of a barrier there with the trees that exist. So he had to come out and take a look
Okay,
himself.
all right.
Can
Tim?
I ask a question?
Sure, Patty. And then Tim. I
From
know
the
she
edge of
knows.
pavement of the road, how far back are you gonna cut from the existing driveway? Is it at least 10 feet, 15 feet? Because it is not like right against the road, it's back, and there looks like there is more mature trees towards the road, that if you would leave a barrier of the mature trees there and cut back a certain distance. Because by this picture, it looks like, to me, it's kind of like 10 feet back.
Yeah, we have it roughly at like 17 feet. Yeah,
So-
so there's some good distance there.
All right, I
That
don't
would
want
be
to get too technical because it's clear that we don't have the answers to the footage, and I don't want to tie this applicant down to something that may or may not be accurate, because estimates of footage is usually notoriously off. I understand, I see the picture, but Jim doesn't, and I sort of get what you're saying. Tim?
So, the camper itself, is this something you're gonna take out and use on weekends, or do you just take it to a campsite and leave it for the summer?
We'll keep it at home and take
Okay,
it.
so
We have about 5 trips planned
So just-
this year.
To validate the statements, when the leaves are down in the wintertime, that's when people are gonna see it, and that's what the concern is. It's not so much summer when the leaves are up.
Sure.
And I do understand what you're saying. You have the right to construct a parallel driveway to the road using your existing driveway without a permit, other than probably a modified driveway permit from the town.
That's right. That's why I don't think should be a debate of whether or not the camper can go there. It's whether or not we can create an entrance that allows us to safely park it.
But you are
because
asking.
we will be parking it there regardless of.
But you are
the
asking for a
entrance.
conditional use permit, and there's 5 criteria, and one of them is does it change the surrounding properties? So that's a point that's being discussed.
Well, how I took that question or that criteria is not necessarily what's going to be there, because also one of the things that the fire department mentioned, and it's true, is we may not always have a camper. So what we're gonna do here is take down a few trees but leave the dirt there. It's gonna be a dirt driveway. It's not gonna really change the geography very much of the area. So I look at more of that criteria pertaining to the physical changes we're making to the land, and not so much what we'll use it for now.
Just trying to make sure things are clear.
Sure.
David?
Joe, the application says that this proposed driveway is going to be unpaved. Are you putting down any material to improve the surface, or are you leaving it whatever natural material it is now?
We'll have to put some gravel or nip pack down just so we don't have runoff.
Thank you.
Yep.
Question for Sarah.
Tim?
Sarah, under the driveway permit process, this applicant has to get a DPW permit, correct?
Correct.
And that permit would require a paved apron on the new driveway, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Because there's been a lot of talk about gravel driveways, and nobody mentioned a paved apron. I want to make sure that was on the record.
Oh, sure. Eric put that in his recommendation, so we
I
definitely.
read Eric's recommendations, and I didn't read it. That's why I put a note at the bottom.
Oh.
Well,
I
he
thought-
said in accordance with Goffstown Development regs and driveway standards.
Okay, well, I just,
It may not, maybe it wasn't in that, but I did read something from Eric where it said that was a requirement. So we definitely have
Eric has pretty significant notes on the driveway permit itself.
that. Okay, that's what I thought.
I anticipate Eric being pretty involved in the overseeing some of the construction with grading, tree cutting, making sure the site distances are there, making sure the grading and the apron are installed correctly.
thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. Sarah, there was a question raised by Joanne Duffy in regards to sight lines. Is that an issue? Has anybody raised that? Because we don't have, I don't think, Eric's detailed comments.
Eric had just mentioned that he was going to work with the applicant to make sure, I think there are some rocks and a little grading on the side of the road that need to be adjusted, and I think a little trimming to make sure that he has the full 200. But I spoke to Eric specifically about that issue again, just to make sure, and he said he wasn't worried about it.
Good.
On page 4 of our packet, in the DPW engineering comments, 3 lines from the bottom, it states there will be exactly 200 feet of site distance for the new driveway. So it was addressed, and it's on page 4 of our
Yeah,
packet. It was mailed to us.
this is like page 10 of mine, one of 2 of him, so thank you, I couldn't find it. I guess if we're worried about, my comment would be, if we're worried about the scenic rural nature of Black Brook Road, and the applicant is only gonna use that for an entrance and not an exit, I question whether there might be some consideration of whether you restrict that to be an enter only, and not have to worry about the site distance to do trimming on massive trimming on Blackbrook, but I don't know exactly how much trimming we're talking about, so I guess we will leave it to Eric and the standards, because future people could pull out, I guess, instead of pull in. Anybody else?
This is Jim. I have a question. I understand the applicant's proposal. As he said, the need for this is the RV parking. But once we approve a driveway, it's a driveway. It's not restricted in use. So when the RV goes away, we now have a second driveway. Is that a concern? This is a permanent addition to a property?
Board members, concerns? Tim?
So in Jim's line, if you look at the site, it is possible that a future resident could take that driveway and create a driveway up to the right side of the house to build a barn or a shop or anything, but does that preclude us from approving something tonight, Jim?
Well, if you're approving it for a particular need, you can condition it. If we're approving just a second driveway, and that seems to be what we're doing, that's fine. But don't assume that the use is going to go away if the RV goes away or this applicant moves out of the neighborhood. I hope he doesn't do. So it's a permanent driveway we've created and allowed for whatever purposes the driveway is used for.
That's, if I may, that's definitely a reasonable point. I can say though, we've lived there for almost 13 years, and definitely have tried to think of different ways to use the property because it is unique in the way it's built into the hill. This driveway would really serve very few other alternate uses other than just driving something long into it, because if you know the property, it wraps around and there's not a lot of room on the other side of the house to build much. We've thought about somewhere we could put a garage, but it definitely wouldn't be on that side, in my opinion, because our septic comes out of that side of the house. It's relatively close to that side's property line, so I think we would be, exceeding the setbacks. So, and it's not convenient to park in as like permanent parking for vehicles because there's no easy access up to the house. So you have to walk all the way out the driveway and up the established driveway. So it's not that convenient to use for anything other than like storing something large.
Okay.
But still, the point is valid. Like, yes, technically,
It'll be another driveway.
it's another driveway.
All right. Any further questions? And Joanne, remind me, if he had 250 feet of frontage, he could just get a driveway permit without a CUP. How much does he have?
230.
219.
He has 219.
Okay. All right, I just wanted to clarify. Thank you. Any other questions from board members? If not,
I have a question.
Oh, okay, go ahead, Karen.
Sorry, Kimberly.
Oh, Kimberly, sorry.
I guess it seems like Eric's notes have a lot of "we will work with the owner." I
Is this an excessive amount of work for our town DPW to help put in a second driveway? I'm just curious. I don't know, Sarah, maybe that's a question for you.
All that means is that we will be involved so that it's done correctly. We will be checking to make sure that those things are done, because we wouldn't approve the driveway if they didn't do those things.
Okay.
All right, other questions? All right, I'm not seeing any questions at this point. I'm going to open the public hearing.
Do we need to review the conditional use permit questions prior to the public hearing?
We can, I don't know that we need to, but we will, since you brought it up. So, in regards to the conditional use permits, you're familiar with them. I'm gonna ask you, the questions of the conditional use permit, just because it sort of helps move things along, and I think you've got,
Thank you.
Patty's just handed you something, so board members know. So the first one has to do whether the use is specifically authorized in the ordinance as a conditional use. Is it? And I think it is, because that's why you're here, right?
That's right, yeah, I said yes, because of the 219 versus 250.
Right. And if the driveway is completed as proposed by you, will the development in the driveway or development of your property in its proposed location comply with all requirements of this section, with the exception of the footage for the lot, with the specific conditions or standards established in the ordinance for the driveway and the use of the property?
I put yes, and I more have thought of that
Right.
complying to the DPW requirements.
Sure. All right. And the use, there's a question as to whether the use will be compatible with the neighborhood and with adjoining or abutting uses in the area in which it is to be located.
Yes.
Okay. And will the use have a substantial adverse impact on vehicular or pedestrian safety?
Well, this one, of course, we believe it will improve or preserve safety. There are no sidewalks or anything, so there's no pedestrian consideration really. You know, people walk, but there's no sidewalks. But it'll preserve the safety, I think.
Right, and that's what you answered in your application. The use will the use have a substantial adverse impact on the appearance and visual quality of the surrounding neighborhood? And you should know, in evaluating visual impact, the planning board may consider architectural and design elements, which are not really applicable to a driveway. So will the use have a substantial adverse impact on the appearance?
We do not believe so. Nope.
Okay, the driveway will be unpaved with what you need for stabilization from nit pack and gravel?
Correct.
And will it require drastic alteration of the landscape as it currently sits?
Nope.
And you think that there'll be one medium-sized tree and a handful of smaller trees coming down?
Yes.
All right. And will the use be adequately serviced by necessary public utilities and by community facilities and services of a sufficient capacity to ensure operation properly of the proposed use?
I put not applicable since
Right.
this is just a
You
flat
don't-
space.
You're hoping not to need any utilities for a
Right.
driveway, right?
We had DigSafe come out and, apparently there's no piping or wires or anything under there, so.
Oh, okay, good. Thank you. All right, thank you, Tim, for pointing that out. At this time, I will open the public hearing. This is a public hearing on an application for a second driveway entrance. It is map 11, lot 17-7. This is a completeness review conditional use permit hearing to add a second driveway on a lot that does not meet the required minimum footage. There is no member of the public here to speak on this application. Patty, do we have anybody online?
You do not. There's no public on the line.
All right, seeing that there's no public present in person or telephonically, I'm going to close the public hearing at this point in time. Board members, are there any other questions or outstanding issues that you would like to see addressed or discussed?
Barbara, this is Jim. Can you just summarize the, I hate to call them changes, but the points that the applicant has agreed to, if any, so that we have them in our minutes? There was some discussion about the width or the plantings, and I lost track of what they are. So if you could at least summarize, if any, what the applicant agreed to change or do that wasn't shown on the plan.
Tim?
So do you agree that you are going to minimize cutting on the edge of the town road to maximize the screening that's available, that's there now, and keep the driveway on your land as much as possible?
Yes.
So Jim, is that a condition we could include, that the applicant agrees to not cut in the right-of-way area and do all the cutting on his own land? That will leave the screening that's on the edge of the road intact? So we can put that in the record, that the applicant has agreed not to cut in the town right-of-way and to keep the driveway on his land as much as possible, to leave the screening that's on the edge of the road in place.
Do we need one exception? Just, of course, the whatever
cut.
trees
You
are
need to
at
do
the
the cut.
entrance.
Other than where you cut in for the second driveway.
Right.
Okay.
Where you're gonna have your parallel
I was gonna
driveway.
mention
Yes,
that.
yes.
Don't worry, I had you,
All right,
I had
thank
you
you.
covered on that one.
And what is the planned width of the gravel driveway? Did you put something down on your application?
Eric had 22 feet in there.
No, that's the opening, I believe.
Width of the second drive, no, it's the width of the second driveway would be a maximum of 22 feet.
I think that is the entrance, because there's a regulation how wide you're allowed to have a driveway in the town ordinance. But where you're actually gonna pull along to park the camper,
Okay,
can you restrict that to, say, 10 feet? That gives you enough room to maneuver and park it and still walk on both sides of it, because it's 8 feet wide, I would assume, correct?
yeah, I would say, can we put in no wider than 15 feet?
15 is wider than a normal driveway. Most
It
normal
is?
driveways are 12 feet wide, even paved driveways.
All right, can we do 12?
I think that'd be fine.
Do we have Sarah, do we have a restriction on driveway widths?
The restriction is 22 feet at the right-of-way line and then 5-foot flares. So we only really have control of people's driveways up to the right-of-way line.
Right.
So once it's in, the portion that's on my property, we could make as wide as we want.
Under
Sorry.
the current regulations, we don't have any authority to,
Okay.
But we're asking you to make a statement to try.
Barbara, I disagree with that statement. We can put a condition from a driveway permit. There's driveway permits and then there's planning. As a planning matter, we can put a condition on the approval, which is a restriction on width. That's not something that DPW is concerned about, but we may.
I'm not disputing that. I just wanted to clarify the 22 feet and where DPW was involved in having a restriction or a maximum amount, minimum maximum amount. I understand we can put restrictions on it.
So that's okay. Like, I mean, we don't need a ton of space. I just don't want it to be like a tight squeeze. So no more than 12 feet if 12 is the standard.
That's a perfectly fair statement.
I understand that, but I also own a trailer. And while I haven't used it in many years at this point, so if your trailer is 8 feet wide and has a pullout, that means that you have a couple of feet on the side of the trailer to be going in and out. So I'm just gonna tell the board, that could be tight depending on what's parked in the driveway.
I appreciate that. We definitely don't want it, like, you know, it's not an inexpensive purchase, and we'd rather not have it brushing up against trees.
The trees and stuff.
And, you know, if there's an edge to the driveway, you know, I'd hate for any sort of unexpected runoff to occur. So a little bit of width is probably better.
Tim?
So our discussion just sort of got a little wider. We were talking about having a place to park your trailer. Now we're talking about a place to park your trailer and run the sides out and park it to use it. Is that your intention?
No.
Oh.
No, I think she's just making a point that, you know,
You clean them, you load them, you unload them, they're not just,
Okay.
but again, I would not expect us to need anything wider than 12. To be honest, I don't know the average width of a driveway, so I'm thinking if 12 is the standard, then we shouldn't need more than that.
just because we have a driveway width of 12 feet doesn't mean the applicant cut brush back a little on both sides to make room for an
We
one
just
of
And that's
asked
fine.
the applicant to not cut the brush.
Well,
Okay. Any other comments? All right, I'm not seeing, we have comments in regards to issue, we want to minimize the cutting. And the applicant has agreed to that. We understand there needs to be a cut at the access point. Should we approve this? We understand there's a driveway modification permit required and DPW has to be consulted. And now there is a request to put a condition of a width on the driveway itself. So, I need to hear a little more on the width piece from people. All right, not hearing anything, I'll call for a motion on this.
Wait a minute, I have a question.
Peter?
What is the difference on the driveway width if it's going, let's say, the one side of the driveway from the public right-of-way is 20 feet, and then if he goes 12, 18, 20 to the inside of his property, what is the difference as far as the aesthetic value to the road? I'm not sure what the difference is.
Barbara, this is Jim. May I be heard?
Go ahead, Jim.
My concern is not this applicant, but as we said, this is a driveway. If you make it too wide, it turns into a parking lot. So be wide enough to use for the purpose he intends, and whether it's 12 or 15, I don't care. If you don't put some width, I think we've seen another lot. It's widened, and suddenly you have multiple cars parked there, and it's a parking lot, not a driveway. That's my concern. But that's their concern. But as to the exact width, I agree. It's a usable width for the use he needs. I'm not concerned about this applicant per se later.
Yeah.
Barbara, I agree with Jim, but I also agree with you that if you've got a slide out and you've got to work around that slide, and you do put the slide out just to clean and things like that, that 12 feet may be restrictive. I would say 15 feet.
Okay, would
you like that as a motion?
I'm writing them down.
all right, we have 15 feet, Tim's writing down, he's our sort of scribe between his notebooks that we keep stored in his garage and his notes. If you come back here in 2 years, Tim Redmond will pull out that notebook and have exactly what went on, so just so
That's
you know.
an important quality to bring to the
At this
meeting.
rate, Tim's going to need a slide out in his garage for his files.
I'll get a permit, Phil.
Conditional use permit.
All right, does anybody else on the board members, we have concerns about the brush cutting, the concerns over controlling the width. Vehicles are, we understand Jim's point about turning into a parking lot versus the use. And the requirements of DPW and working with it. Why don't we first take a motion as to whether to grant the conditional use permit? Is there a motion to do that? Subject to the conditions. We'll do the
condition part of
conditions
that?
in the same motion. Hold on, I'm waiting for Tim.
So, the staff recommends 2 conditions: driveway modification permit required, and consult with DPW prior to doing any work. Based on what I seem to have heard from our members, number 3, the driveway width will be restricted to 15 feet parallel to the Blackbrook Road, and tree cutting is limited to the applicant's property and the access point to Blackbrook Road. Is that stated correctly?
So the proposal from Tim is a motion to approve the conditional use permit subject to those conditions. Gail?
What was the
Second.
tree cutting limited to, Tim?
The tree cutting is limited to the applicant's property
And you said something about access?
and the access point at Blackbrook Road.
Okay.
That was seconded by Peter. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'm going to call for a vote. Tim?
Yes.
The chair votes yes. Kimberly?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Phil?
Yes.
Okay, the conditional use permit is granted. Happy camping.
Great, thank you.
You're
Want
welcome.
this back?
Sure.
Thank you. Does like a permit come in the mail or something?
Eric will get from Sarah that's been approved and he can issue the permit.
Okay, so I don't actually have to hold a permit and like show
Yeah,
it
we
to
don't,
them.
yeah,
Okay,
no.
Perfect.
Yeah, Eric will
Works.
give us a copy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming. All right. I believe the only other item that I have notice of for agenda has to do with the recommendation to a select board for appointment to the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission. Joanne?
We have one appointment that we need to address tonight, and that would be for Barbara Griffin to be reappointed to Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission.
Apparently Barbara Griffin's term ended technically last summer. A notice came to town. And because the appointment is one of those ones until somebody else appointed, I've still been going, but the Southern New Hampshire Planning sort of said, hey, what's up? Tim?
Will you accept the position?
I will.
I'd like to make a motion to reappoint. Is it us, or do we make a recommendation to the selectmen?
Recommendation to the
I'd
select
like
board.
to make a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen to reappoint Barbara Griffin for a term of, what is it, how long is the term?
So that's the question, does it date from 6/30/20, or do we date it, it's a 2-year term? From what date? And I don't know if it matters, but we should specify it.
Is it a
Just the
2-year?
current-
I always thought it was 3.
I think
I believe it's a 3-year,
Right.
it's either 3 or 4
it's 3.
year.
From today's date?
We can do it from June.
No, it would,
From the,
it would
from
be
the
from
date
the
it-
date of expiration from the last
Right.
term, which was last June.
June.
Yes.
So my motion is to recommend to the Board of Selectmen to reappoint Barbara for another 3-year term dating 6/30/20 to 6/30/23.
And I'll second that.
All right, is there any further discussion? The chair, we're going to call for a vote. Tim?
Yes.
The chair votes yes. Kimberly?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Phil?
Yes.
Okay. Joanne, do we have any other business tonight?
No, we have no other business. If you're interested in knowing, our next meeting is February 25th. We have one application for a lot line adjustment in Pinardville, and the next meeting after that is March 11th.
And I have a question.
Peter?
I think it might be Phil.
Was that Phil? Phil? Yeah,
That wasn't me, Phil.
Yes, well, I don't know if, when we finish with the business Joanne brought up.
we're finished with what Joanne brought up.
What's that?
Phil, go ahead. It's,
Yeah, the question that I have is so the request for our recommendation for building permit on a class on this road is going to the ZBA. So it's going to go to the ZBA. There'll be a determination. Then it's coming back to us again.
that's,
No, the ZBA tables it for the planning board's recommendation. But we're not sure if it's going back to the ZBA because the applicant didn't show up. So we don't know where it's at this point.
but
All
the
right,
normal,
The only reason I was bringing it up because we had one other one before that went to the ZBA, and then they were requesting our input, and it was like, why our input after the ZBA? That's all I was, that's all.
I think the original application goes to the ZBA, and so that's where the applicant starts the process with the information, and then it comes over for our input.
If they get the variance and it gets approved, then they go for the building permit. You're making a recommendation on the building permit to the select.
I understand that, Patty.
Okay.
But the issue that I have is why even come to the planning board if you're going to go directly to the ZBA and go through that entire process for an approval and then come back to the to the planning board? I said that's the wrong time. To me, the ZBA can use the information from the planning board to reach its decision.
In regards to the variance you're talking about.
Well, yeah, because that's part of the planning to get the permit. They can't get the permit without the ZBA approval.
they're approving a variance, not building on a Class 6 road. You're making a recommendation to building on a Class 6 road, not the variance.
It's a difficult
I
which cart or
understand,
the horse
but the
first.
variance is part of you need the variance to get the permit.
Yeah, but the process, as discussed with the town administrator, is they go to ZBA first. If they get denied, it's a moot point. If it gets approved, the select board need a recommendation from the planning board.
But at that point, that's the problem. Because then when it comes to the planning board, if the planning board doesn't think that it should be and votes not to recommend it, and they got it from the ZBA, the planning board's opinion is useless.
But the board of selectmen can deny the permit.
I'm not going to get into that on this because you know what's going to happen, just like all the other members of the board have brought up in the past. Why even bother bringing it to the Board of Selectmen at that point? That's why I said there's a long history with this, and if you looked at the history, you'd understand what I was talking about.
Okay. All right, well, I mean, maybe there needs to be...
history on this property and further back.
All right, well, the chair of the ZBA is sitting here, so maybe she will ask for the history of this property in addition to what information the applicant brings, or you
And
could
it might
ask
be
her
helpful how many
independently.
times it's gone to the selectmen in the meantime and been denied.
All right, so is that a specific request that staff provide the ZBA with that information?
Yeah, because I think it's all part of being able to have all the information in front of you to reach a decision.
Okay, thank you. Tim?
Phil,
Thank you.
Phil, do you know if the select board has the authority to overrule a ZBA decision and say no to an application for a Class 6 road?
I think there's two different things. I mean, the ZBA can only make a determination on the zoning. I don't think the selectmen can overturn a decision of the ZBA.
No, but could the if they were granted the ZBA decision favorably for the zoning issue, can the Board of Selectmen still tell an applicant, no, you may not build on the Class 6 road?
As far as issuing,
Jim, I'm gonna recognize Jim, please.
There are two different decision-making processes. The variance is one, I think Joanne said, or Patty said. That's a zoning matter. The second is the procedure for, and it's RSA 67441, of erection of building permits on Class 6 roads and private roads. That has a separate procedure where the Board of Selectmen, the Select Board, makes that decision, but they have to first send it to Planning Board for comment. So all we're doing is commenting to the Select Board on whether or not, under that statute, we recommend the issuance of a building permit. But they're two separate matters. I mean, Phil's right. They do influence each other, but they're still separate decisions.
So I'm guessing from that statement that the Board of Selectmen could ultimately deny that permit even if the Zoning Board of Adjustment gave a favorable decision on the zoning matter.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there any further business for the board to address?
Motion to adjourn.
There's
Okay.
There's been a motion to adjourn, and it has been seconded. I'll call for a vote. Tim?
Yes.
The chair votes yes. I lost my list with the order of people I was going through.
And we all said yes.
Yes. Kimberly?
Yes.
Phil?
Yes.
Peter?
Yeah.
Jim?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Got them all?
Did I get everybody?
Got them all?
All right, we are adjourned. Good night, everybody.
Thank you. Good night.
Hey.
Right.